My name's Adrian Rohard and I'm qualified as a barrister and a solicitor, representing people in the Crown Courts in Kent and South East London, people charged with serious offences. Laws, of course, have developed over time and often many hundreds of years. Did you know, for example, that in France it's still illegal to name your pig Napoleon? Or in Denmark, the penalty for a man who says to his wife that she's uglier than her mother is up to a year in prison. Or in Switzerland, you're not allowed to flush your toilet after 10 p.m. if you live in a flat or an apartment. So the law kind of governs how we relate to each other. So today we're looking at the ethics surrounding Christians and the law. Questions such as, should Christians always obey the law? Is it okay to speed when driving? Should Christians pay their taxes? What to do if, as a Christian, you fundamentally disagree with the government that is in power? Because on the one hand, as Christians, we have the laws of the land, wherever we live. And on the other hand, we have the Bible, which Christians, of course, believe is the Word of God and also contains the laws of God. And sometimes these two things come into conflict. So looking at the issue, first of all, of laws and taxes. Should Christians obey the law? Should they pay their taxes? The Bible is quite clear on this point. In Romans 13, verse 1-7, the Apostle Paul says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted. Therefore, it is necessary to submit to the authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honour, then honour." So we can see from that the Apostle Paul is telling Christians that they should obey the law and pay taxes. So what happens if someone says to you, perhaps someone who's doing some work for you, that if you pay in cash, they'll knock off 20% because they don't have to pay the VAT? Should you save money, knowing that that person is not going to pay their taxes? Or should you offer to pay the full amount so that they can pay their VAT? These are the sort of moral dilemmas that Christians face. But more tricky is the question of what happens when biblical laws directly conflict with the laws of the land. We see many examples in recent times of people in particular positions in society who have refused to carry out functions because it conflicts with their particular views. There's a registrar who would not marry a gay couple, for example, and other examples we can see that have been challenged in the courts. So in those circumstances, is it right for a Christian to break the law? And again, we can go back to the Bible on this point. And Acts 5, verse 27 says, "The apostles were brought in and made to appear before the Sanhedrin, to be questioned by the high priest. We gave you strict orders not to teach in this name," he said. "Yet you have filled Jerusalem with your teaching and are determined to make us guilty of this man's blood." Peter and the other apostles replied, "We must obey God rather than human beings." So we see from that passage that the apostles, in fact, disobeyed the law of the land because it conflicted with what they perceived to be God's law. However, even in that instance, they are still required to accept the government's authority over them. What about the church? Is it ever right for the church to take action breaking the law of the land? These days it's unlikely to be necessary, given the fact that most matters can go to law and be adjudicated in a court of law. But we do see examples in the 19th century of the church and members taking action in the fight against the slave trade. Christians were involved in freeing slaves from prisons, and some ministers were arrested and were imprisoned as a result of their actions. So we can see from history that that sometimes does occur. As individuals, perhaps we can reflect on our attitude towards the law. Do we obey the law? Do we respect the government, even if we disagree? Do we pay our taxes? What do we do in circumstances, for example, where the builder offers us a discount for cash? And what about beyond that? As Christians, are there issues for which we would be willing to put a stake in the ground to say that we would not obey a law that conflicted with our Christian views? These are all matters that need to be prayerfully and carefully considered. So let me encourage you today to reflect on whether you are keeping the law and to what extent, and more importantly, to what extent you are keeping God's law.